Hello and welcome to the FinTech Newscast. My name is John, and this week we'll be talking to a member of Gen Z, finding out their attitudes around FinTech and other things. Please hit subscribe to keep up with this and the latest in FinTech news. All right, let's get going. With me this week is my co-host Steve.
Hey, John. How's it going?
Good. And I'm excited to introduce my niece, who could not visit this week because of the coronavirus lockdown, but is willing to join us for an interview on perspectives of Gen Z. Welcome, Ember.
Hi, Uncle John. Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I mentioned we talk a lot about new attitudes, new products that are targeted to millennials and Gen Z, new types of ways of doing things that get adopted by younger people first. And we might be making some assumptions, so we thought we'd ask a real live member of Gen Z, a 20-year-old college student who, yes, happens to be my niece.
This is ethnographic podcasting at its best. It's actually real live research with a subject.
Oh, right. Yeah. And, that's important. So if you're out there listening, you can hear some real attitudes coming out, not just surveys and assumptions, I should say. So, Amber, how many bank accounts do you have?
Just one.
Yep. Which bank do you bank at?
I use Chase.
So, Amber, you use Chase. Is that because your parents also use Chase?
Yes, it is actually.
Interesting. So it's not like you're getting any recommendations from your fellow college students. So I'm wondering, what other apps beyond Chase do you have on your phone that have any sort of money component?
Well, with Chase, you use Zelle, of course, and then there's also Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal, which I've used all plenty of times between friends and or even to buying food now, you see.
So you've actually used Venmo and PayPal and Zelle to pay for groceries?
I would more say fast food. So like with Uber Eats,
like delivery.
You can use online paying. Correct.
Is there a delivery service that you like to use?
I've used Grubhub a few times. I try to not make it a habit, but along with like Uber Eats, and they all use online paying, no cash involved, no paper cash, that is.
If you think of the way in which you handle your finances now, and I know that for most young adults in your age cohort, there's a lot of intermingling between your parents' account and your account. But I wonder, do you feel like you have a good handle on where you stand with either your spending or your savings or your grasp of money right now?
Yeah, I would say so. Because I'm under a student account, so that comes with benefits of no interest. It's just a debit account, no credit. I think personally, I'm very mindful of my spending and budgeting, making sure I'm staying not in the negative. And then with that, especially having the app on your phone, you can always check, because I personally don't do a checkbook, but with that, I use the app to check my statements and see how much I have or how much I've spent already. And I think Chase does a great interaction with helping you manage that.
Oh, and what kind of tools do they have? Showing how much you're spending on food, breakdowns, or
yeah, they do breakdowns.
How much you're.
Yeah, they do breakdowns. They'll tell you how much you're spending weekly, and sometimes that number is really high, and I'm like, oh, I need to cut it down a little bit. And then you can see, of course, when money's coming in, when money's going out. So I think it's just very helpful to see that.
Amber, have you ever thought of using a banking services not from a big bank, like what's called a neobank or a challenger bank? Maybe a company like N26 or Chime, or are you going to stick to just the well-known banks that have a physical presence?
I would say for now, we'll stick to the well-known, especially I'm not that familiar with other banks.
That makes sense. And can I ask you, in terms of your financial literacy, do you think like you get that mostly from your parents, your peers, or is there any source that you trust to give you good financial advice if you do need it?
Yeah, I have my uncle right here. But no, definitely, I do rely on my parents, and trust them in their knowledge of it financially and what to do, what not to do, how to check things, how to manage your money and budget, things like that.
Just a little bit on privacy. Do you tend to worry about getting hacked or your information getting out there? I don't know if you use Facebook or any other social media as well. But
right.
What generally do you worry about, if at all, on privacy and security things?
I mean, that definitely is a factor, something to be worried about. You can get hacked on anything. But so far, the only time that there has been fraud was through using my physical card.
Oh, you had a problem with that?
At like gas stations and things, like you have to get a new card. For me personally, there hasn't been any issues like using it online, and if that answers your question.
What social media do you use?
Tons, anywhere from Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, So there are definitely a lot of...
too.
Yeah. So I could see how there's many platforms for that being a risk, but thankfully that hasn't happened to me. And preventing it, I'm not exactly sure how to address that.
I think a lot of people who rely on digital-only platforms have a less of a concern with privacy and with hacks than those who do. Sort of, you mentioned that you were hacked on your physical credit card transactions, so this makes sense. I'm wondering, when you think of, a company who you want to give your data to, whether that be Pinterest or Facebook or Instagram or something, are you concerned at all about how the stances that company makes in terms of their environmental or social impact, so that you're not, say, supporting a company that they may do something that maybe you don't agree with politically, or from an environmental perspective, or is that not a concern for you right now?
It's not really a concern for me.
And how much do you actually talk about finances at a high level with your peers, with not your parents and not Uncle John?
Not much at a high level. The very bare minimum of it, of the basics, like what bank do you use? How do they work? Back to the little other payment apps such as Venmo. That's how I got into using Venmo and PayPal. That's more of my peer side, just exchanging money between friends if they bought lunch one day and then you paid them back through Venmo. And so yeah, I would say just the bare minimum, nothing too in depth.
Oh yeah, so expense sharing, you split a pizza or something like that and you can Venmo each other?
Right.
Is Venmo the most popular one, or PayPal?
I personally like Zelle, but not everybody has it. So I would say the next popular one would be Venmo, and that's what I see the majority of my friends using.
So you mentioned also before that you also have used this Square Cash App. Do you think there's a difference between people who use Square and Venmo? I'm just curious, among your friends, or Zelle for that matter.
I wouldn't say there's a difference necessarily. I just think a lot of things in my generation, whatever's the most popular is what is going to be used, socially. So that would be, I would say, Venmo. The Squarespace, I've only used for businesses, small businesses use that as a form of payment. So not the pure side, that's a business side.
Some small places, they'll take Square. Okay, that makes sense. Are there any services that you wouldn't use, or you feel like they're sketchy or you wouldn't trust?
There's always going to be the, lack of better words, the knockoff of something. I haven't come across any, all of these ones that I've mentioned have been pretty much what the majority uses. So I think I would be hesitant to use
that herd immunity. Everyone's using it, must be safe kind of thing.
Right. So if there was something not that well known, then I would definitely second guess it and maybe look into it a little more before I use it.
You're in college now. You're going to finish college, I think. Is it next year that you graduate?
In 2022.
In 22. Okay, so you have a ways to go.
Yeah.
Have you thought about things that maybe you'd like to learn about in terms of finances or your how money works or how money will affect you as you progress in your life, either in terms of, it could be mortgages or an investment account, a retirement account. Is there anything that you're kind of curious about that you have questions that you haven't addressed yet?
Oh, yeah, pretty much all of it. I'm not that educated like on the finances, like as an adult with like your retirement fund, like your 401k, like your mortgages, your payment plans. If I ever do get a credit card, how to set it up, how to find my best option, which has the least interest. So I would, I have questions about all of it, and of course, just like everybody else, like when the time comes around, maybe like learn as you go, hopefully with less mistakes.
Put it all in Bitcoin. You're done. You're good.
Don't do
No
that.
problem.
Don't do that.
Yeah, Bitcoin or Ethereum. That's fine either way. By the time you retire, it'll be millions.
Right.
So, do you, your friends, do you hear any concerns about their student loans and how much they're going to have to pay when they graduate?
Yeah, actually, my friend, she's a senior about to graduate, and they want her to sign a contract saying how she's going to pay all of her loans back in like an X amount of time. And she was like, so.
Who's they? Who wants her to sign?
The school.
Oh, the school. So the school is concerned about her level of student loans?
Right, because the student loans are through the school. So, you have to pay them back in a certain amount of time. And she went through for 4 years, not worrying about it. And now her as a senior, like her last semester is now like, oh crap, like I have to pay these, and wasn't putting money aside in the meantime, throughout the 4 years. And I think that's what happens to a lot of students, they don't think about it. They sign for the loan and then kind of are like mindless about it, and then realize that, oh, still real money, you still have to pay that back.
Right. Yeah, and you're at a private university, right? It's not a state school.
Correct.
Yeah, and they have been under some pressure and getting sued or complaints if their people are borrowing to go to their school, and then they don't have it's not with a good job prospect of being able to pay that afterwards. So right. I can see how the school is a little bit concerned. People saying that they're the reason why people are coming out with six-figure, hundreds of thousands or more than 100,000 of loans that takes decades to pay off in some cases.
Right.
Yeah, this is my own experience. But when I went to graduate school, maybe 3 years after I graduated, the financial services director was actually indicted for taking money from the from the student loan companies to get students to take more loans out. So it's definitely an issue of maybe the schools not being the best stewards of their students' financial future, which makes sense. And I think I see how that could be a concern. Have you heard of something called an income sharing agreement, where if you go to school, a company will pay for your tuition, and then you promise to pay them 20% of your income, say, or something like that for like 10 years or so?
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
At a really high level,
yeah.
the thing works so that, they will get you into school, say you study, I don't know, engineering or something, and they will take 20% of your earnings for 5 or 10 years after you graduate. Is that, you think, an attractive model for you, or would you rather be master of your own domain and take on your own debt and then pay off your own debt?
I would say, just off the surface, I would want to pay it myself. But with that, I think I would have to look more into it, and look at the numbers, see what the better option would be, financially. Like if taking 20% out for 5 years is going to end up being less, having to pay less money than the loans, and then paying back the loans on top of the interest, interest rates can be pretty much like the main component as it builds up over the years. But yeah, I would say off the surface, I would probably still just take the loan, probably because that's, again, more what I'm familiar of.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how much you make too. And is the appeal like having some plan for it to be paid off, where you can see like the light at the end of the tunnel with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think that's a huge factor that set, they take it out for 5 years and then that's it, whereas loans, like you said, it can take decades to pay it off.
There's people who are actually senior citizens now who still have student loans.
I believe it.
That's craziness. I heard. So we're undergoing right now a bailout of the economy by the federal government, and I read that with the money they have spent on the corona response in the past week, they could have forgiven everybody's student loan debt in the entire country, which is amazing. It's over $1 trillion now.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, it's more a question of political will. Yeah, I imagine your friend would support that. She might be a Bernie Sanders voter. So you'll be done in a few years for your bachelor's degree, but then you'll still have to go back to school for your specialty, right?
Yeah, for my doctorate. That would be another 3 years.
Oh, another 3 years. So you are in it for the long haul.
Yep.
That's a lot of student debt.
Yeah. Fortunately for these first 4 years for my undergrad, my parents are helping me out a lot, in paying for that. So I don't come out with a lot of debt. But once my doctorate comes around, that's going to be on me. And without a doubt, I'm going to have to take out loans. I'm not going to have 20 plus grand, just to pay it right then and there. But
and plus the royalties from this podcast.
Right.
One thing that I forgot to mention is that as part of these new programs, one feature is that if you don't make any money, you don't pay anything back as well. So they really put skin in the game on you as a person and say that if you have a lower earning potential 5-10 years from now, they lose as well. So they're really vested in you making the most use of your degree from a financial and economic perspective, which is pretty interesting.
It'll be like having another mom calling you and saying, "Have you found a job yet? Did you check up?" They might be asking you that.
Right. And it's obviously something you have to apply for, I would imagine. They're not just going to hand it out to anybody just like a loan.
Right.
Yeah, your prospects. They might look at all that social media to see what kind of a predictive analytics they can come up with on who's a good prospect. But there's a lot of uncertainty. I was just thinking with that in 5 years or so, when you're out in the job market, the world changes so much. Just look at what happened. That's a big risk because the world is like a moving target. It's changing every day. So what you're studying for, what you think you might be working on, might be pretty different in a few years. Or it could be better. Like there's more demand, or it's more interesting, or you have more AI working with you. But the important thing is to, I think with everybody that's in your situation, is to study well and to be as prepared as you can, because a lot of it is teaching you how to think as well.
Yeah, of course.
Sage advice from Uncle John.
Yeah.
As
not
always.
fintech, strictly. Yeah. Yeah. So with this whole coronavirus thing going on, and you're in school, this is really affecting you. I mean, you missed your spring break trip here, but more importantly, when you go back to school, do they have a plan, or are you concerned about how that's going to affect the rest of your school year?
Yeah, we actually just received an email the other day saying when we come back to school, it's going to be all online, so there won't be any on-ground or in-class sessions. So
you're in a dorm?
Yeah.
Are they closing the dorm?
They are, at the moment, they are keeping the dorms open, but it's highly recommended that if you can go home, to go home, because my school has a high population of international students. It's really hard for them, especially with international flights being canceled. But the school is doing a really great job, I think, in keeping like the food services open for those students who are kind of stuck there.
Yeah, so you'll be working from your parents' house, and most of your classes are pretty amenable to doing online, or they lend themselves to working well online?
Yeah. Before all this, we were already very, like school-wide, we're very technologically advanced in that most of our assignments or anything was accessible online. It was due online. And like the backside of that is professors feel that students get more work done, or it's more accessible for students to get their work done online versus like on paper, you know, and having to turn in like a physical copy of something, that they get a higher rate of students doing their work if it's online because it's more accessible. You know, you can do it anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they've seen like better participation and results with online.
Correct. Like my math professor was like, you know, if you need help with a problem, we can FaceTime, you know, and that's just being at a small school, you know, with roughly 500 students.
That's tiny. Wow.
Yeah, super small. But in times like this, it has its benefits, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for joining us, and we wish you luck on the rest of your school year and keeping you and your parents healthy until this whole thing is done. And thanks for sharing your attitudes and thoughts on fintech.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
And always remember, Amber, if you have any questions, Uncle John is your guy.
Wash your hands.
Sounds
Wash
good.
your hands. All right. Thanks for joining us this week on the FinTech Newscast. Please hit subscribe to keep up with the latest in FinTech news, and we'll see you next week.
Stay safe. Bye.